Welcome back and welcome to Talk of the Nation. Now this week, schools opened for the third term of learning, with many administrators and parents concerned about the low turnout. Now this follows measures passed by the Ministry of Education at the beginning of the holidays, allowing for a slight increment in fees. However, this has coincided with a drop in the capitation grant for state-aided schools. All this has prompted calls for reforms in the sector to ensure equal access to learning. Now, to share more on this, we do have MUSA MUGOYA, a program manager with the Initiative for Social and Economic Rights. Good evening, sir, and welcome to Talk of the Nation.
Good evening, Mildred, and good evening, our viewers.
Let's start with the low turnout in schools. Does this concern you as well?
Yes, I think it concerns us as an organization, and I think it should concern everybody in the country, because education is not only important to the individual person who receives it, but I think also the society. I don't think there is any country or any economy that has gone without having quality human resource. So I think it is important for each and every person to access education.
Well, this low turnout is attributed to, the parents that are struggling, with the economic situation and the increase in tuition and them being not able to pay. Do you share the same concerns?
Yes, and I think what is happening in Uganda right now, every challenge now is being attributed to the current economic situation, the COVID-19 and so on. But before,
which is true.
Yeah, which is true, I agree. But before that, actually, we have had these challenges as a country. For many years, Ministry of Education and Sports was reporting that out of the 10 children that enroll in primary 1, only 3 will reach primary 7. The Uganda National, Uganda Bureau of Statistics, through the Uganda National Hold Survey that they issue after every period, I think, of 2 years, has indicated that out of the 6 out of the 10 persons that drop out of school, it is as a result of the high cost of education. So it is true, the challenges, perhaps the current economic situation has just worsened a bad situation that we already had, and maybe we may go to 8, or we may even reach to a level, if the situation continues, we may reach a situation where out of the 110 persons that join primary 1, only 10 or 1 is able to reach primary 7, and I think that will be it will be a very bad situation for the country, where you have a high number of people who have not even completed primary.
Due to?
Due to, first of all, the high cost of education, but also the fact that there is limited funding of education, because what is causing all that is that much as government introduced universal primary education and universal secondary education, it has not matched the enrollment there with the necessary resources. I'll give an example. When they introduced UPE, they say that they will provide capitation grants in addition to constructing classrooms and
which they have been doing. Yes,
recruiting and remunerating teachers. They would provide capitation grants in exchange for school fees. So parents will not pay school fees, and the government now will provide a capitation grant to cover that. However, that capitation grant has been found to be insufficient by government institutions themselves. In 2018, the National Planning Authority conducted what they called the comprehensive evaluation of universal primary education. And by then they recommended that for schools to be in a position to provide the required quality of education, and without the schools charging parents such that they fill the gap which has been left by the capitation grant allocated by government, they should, each learner per year in primary should be allocated 50,000, around 50,000 for rural schools and 60,000 for urban schools. So I think since then we are 20,000, but again now when we factor into the inflationary rates which has happened, you find that maybe perhaps we have to go to 80,000, and we are still at 20,000. And already there are reports that that money has also been what?
Slashed.
Has been slashed. So you find that, and maybe also to help the listeners, this capitation grant is used on 4 aspects mainly. 1, for procurement of instructional materials, 2, for co-curricular activities, 3, for maintenance of the school, doing minor maintenance, and then administrative costs.
Scholastic materials as well?
Yes. I think scholastic materials falls under the instructional materials.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So it means that if the capitation is inadequate, the school will not be in a position to meet those basic necessities which are needed for purposes of running the school. And remember, I think it must have been last year, government commenced the implementation of the new curriculum for lower secondary. When we interact with those secondary teachers, they will tell you that this curriculum requires them to use a lot of materials in purposes of instructing learners. They have moved from the too much theoretical curriculum, now they are doing a lot of practicals. So if the money is being cut, which is used or utilized for purposes of requiring those necessities, it means even the implementation of the new curriculum is in suspense. We may not even achieve the intention for which we started it.
Yeah, it's actually from that we've seen even government-aided schools going ahead to charge or impose a fee to students, asking them to pay fees, tuition to be able to run schools. Are you in agreement with that? It depends.
For the UPE schools and youth schools, they are not supposed to charge school fees. So government is supposed to finance them fully.
Yes.
And they should not charge school fees.
True.
The schools which are justified to charge the school fees are those ones which are government aided but not UPE and youth, and then the private schools. However, those schools, their school fees structures has to be regulated. When you read Section 3 of the Education Act, and I think also Section 57, it mandates the Minister for Education to issue a number of statutory instruments for purposes of managing education matters. Parliament gave the Minister a lot of powers in terms of issuing statutory instruments. However, ever since the Education Act was enacted in 2008, no minister has ever issued a statutory instrument. And particularly on the issue of school fees, we have urged the Minister of Education and Sports for many years to use statutory instrument for purposes of regulating fees. What happened is that the permanent secretaries, the one who has permanent secretaries who have been there in the Ministry of Education, are the one who have allocated themselves the responsibility of regulating school fees through circulars, which is not even provided for in the law. The bit about using a statutory instrument is that there will even be penalties. The minister will risk penalties for the schools that will not comply. And I've heard many people say that it is not possible to regulate school fees in Uganda. It is not true. This country has ever had a statutory instrument to regulate school fees. During the Obote II government, there was a statutory instrument to regulate school fees. And it clearly provided the amount of money that each school, the day school and the boarding school.
Private?
By that time it was government-aided schools. Yes, you know, the liberalization to bring in a number of private schools happened from 1993, following the development of the government white paper on education. So by then, they were regulating school fees.
So do you think that is something that needs to be carried forward?
Yes, it is something which needs to be carried forward, and I think both government, or rather Minister of Education, and I've seen also these discussions in Parliament, my only issue with them is that they have been reactionary. They only come up when schools are reopening, they talk about it, but...
So they don't give it more time?
They don't give it more time. At the beginning of this term, actually even the 10th Parliament, we petitioned Parliament and even shared a copy of the petition with the Minister of Education after collecting a number of views from the general public about the issue of school fees. Nothing happened. This year, Parliament itself, there is a member of Parliament, Honorable Salo Pendi, who presented a motion about calling upon the government to regulate school fees in government-aided schools, especially those ones that are not implementing UP and use. Up to now, I think Minister of Education has committed to regulate school fees, but they haven't. So we really think, I mean, can you imagine even South Sudan is regulating school fees? Because we, at least for now, we take that South Sudan as a country is not that managed properly compared to Uganda. Of course, that can be debatable. I'm not saying it in a manner that I'm attacking the people of South Sudan.
Yeah.
But I think the Ministry of Education and Sports should ensure that, one, there is sufficient financing of education.
Thank you.
But also, they should ensure that for those schools which are not implementing UPE and use, the government-aided schools and the private schools, there is effective regulation of school fees to afford each and every person the opportunity to access education and handle the issue of exploitation of the parents.
Thank you so much, MUSA Mugoya, a program manager with the Initiative for Social and Economic Development, getting to share on the situation of the capitation grant that was slashed by the government. Well, we take a break and return with NTV Weekend Edition.